How's it going, everyone? The 1MFP here. I hope you're all doing great today. Clancy is here, the much anticipated, much awaited album from 21 Pilots that is supposed to conclude the whole Dima story. If you've been following this channel, you've kind of seen my interpretation on most of that. Like I've mentioned in the past, I haven't really gone so much into the Dima org stuff that you could actually find in this journal right here. I do intend on going through that journal and getting more informed in that regard. But through my past videos, you could kind of see my take on the concept as it appears in the songs and in the music videos. So I'm just really curious to see where it goes from here. So I'm going to get right into this album reaction. They tend to be a little long, so I don't want to make too much of a long intro. But if you are new to this channel, welcome. I do hope you enjoy this video. I've reacted to all of 21 Pilots albums in the past, so you could find a playlist with all my 21 Pilots reactions. That includes a bunch of music videos, a bunch of songs, and the album reaction for all the albums. So if you're curious about any of my thoughts on past songs, you could find that all there. Also, as we know, the album starts with 3 songs that have already been released, so I have reacted to the music video for those. I will have those linked down below. I won't be going as in-depth with the songs this time around, but I still want to listen to them so that I get into the flow of the album as it was intended. But yeah, without further ado, let's get this show started. I'm gonna get myself situated and start Overcompensate. Let's go. Got goosebumps. Such a good way to get you hyped up. Welcome back to Trench. What'd you do, Tyler? Here comes that switch up. What? Dangerous bend symbol. See, I am Clancy, hit who you serve, and kick to the curb. Passing the glasses, half empty, half full, same happy taxes that overtake your former self. Dangerous band symbol. There's feeling like a perfect length, I don't need them any longer, but for goodness sake, the years seem way too short for my soul, corazón. On my straight feet, the tricks of my Adidas track jacket, was your hero host while you react acting. Got smack, don't hesitate, so maybe overcompensate. Catching my peripheral, don't hesitate, maybe overcompensate. Woo! What a way to start an album. Man. You know, one thing that occurred to me over time as I listened to this track, and I also went back to listen to some of the past albums, by track 2 in Trench, you have Levitate, and he talks about compensating there, right? I'm gonna pull up the exact lyric. Chorus, verse, now here comes the 8. Wait, habits here too, you're the worst, your structure compensates, but compensation feels a lot like rising up to dominate by track 2. So, I mean, there's a lot going on with those few lines, right? You have chorus, verse. He's talking about the general structure of a song and feeling like he maybe has to conform with that structure. And the whole idea of Dima is established on this idea of strict guidelines that you kind of feel like you have to abide by in order to get by and in order to be good enough. And it feels like in that moment, he's noticing the pattern, right? The overlap between structure in his story of Dima and structure within the context of making a song. So when he says your structure compensates, it's like, you know, he's insecure about the music he's putting out and the music he's making. So he feels this pull towards that structure in order to feel like what he's making is good. But he's come to find that that's a bad habit. He needs to break free from that and do something that's not necessarily the norm. He kind of has to follow what his mind and his heart is telling him. So in an attempt to combat that idea of conforming to strict standards for making a song, he's going to go completely against that. And that's what Levitate was supposed to be. He was compensating for the insecurity by not doing what the insecurity was going to make him do, which was, follow those guidelines. He went for something completely different with track 2, something, explosive, something borderline arrogant, as I've mentioned in the past. It's like he's got this bravado to him that we're not so used to seeing out of him in these songs. So to have that there in track 2 after a song like Jumpsuit, no less, it was really interesting to see. And you could kind of see the idea of him compensating for where he was at in track 1, right? He's kind of taking a complete left turn. Well, here with Overcompensate, it feels like he's doing that from the get-go, right? He's not leaving any space for fear at all here. He's just going to go straight for the jugular and bring that energy in track 1. He was talking about track 2 back there in Trench. Here he's doing it right off the bat in track 1. And he's pulling no punches. He's hiding nothing at all. He's saying it right off the bat. Welcome back to Trench. So we know we're back into that, in that storyline, in that world. He talks about the fact that he created this world and he could destroy it if he wants. That's something he mentioned back on Bandito, which was somewhere near the end of Trench. So to have all of that mentioned so early on here in this album, in Clancy, it's really establishing a rebellious feel here early on with the album. And this is something we kind of saw in the music video as well. He was trying to gather these people and, show them that there exists life beyond the walls of Dima. There exists another way to live. But yeah, I don't want to go too deep into the music videos. It's all to say that he's establishing a certain feel really early on. And I really like that he introduces himself in verse 1. If you're going to have the album named Clancy, you do want to know who Clancy is pretty early on. And verse 1, he says, earn my stripes, 300 tracks in my Adidas track jacket. Bless your ear holes while you react. Acting gobsmacked, don't hesitate to maybe overcompensate. And he also mentions a theme that we've heard for a long time in their music, talking about sleep and how that may relate to a cycle. We don't have the cycle mentioned here yet, particularly, but if you've been listening to 21 Pilots music, you kind of know where he's going with this, right? Don't fall asleep on a boy who can't fall asleep twice in the same night and won't hesitate to maybe overcompensate. He's talked about how he's utilized his pain to make music in the past, right? You go back to where this all started, theoretically, if we're considering Vessel the starting point for all of this. In Ode to Sleep, he says, take this weapon forged in darkness. Some see a pen, I see a harpoon. That pen is where he's channeling all that pain and all that fear, and it's his outlet, and that's part of what makes this music so important to him. He's also mentioned the relationship between his pain and his music in Levitate, where he said, this culture is a poacher of overexposure, not today. Don't feed me to the vultures. I am a vulture who feeds on pain. And just bringing it all back to this song, he's back in that place where he is feeling confident, right? And he is feeling confident enough to bring up the fact that he's going to lean on his pain to make a song like this. And he's saying, you know what, I can't sleep at night and I'm struggling at that time, at that point in the cycle, but here's the result of it, and because of what comes of this, you can't take me lightly. And beyond the elements of confidence, potentially overconfidence that we're getting in this song, and beyond the idea of compensation to counter the insecurities, I think one of the more important lines here is the first line of the chorus. I fly by the dangerous bend symbol. I completely misunderstood what the dangerous bend symbol was when I first reacted to this song. I thought it was the 21 Pilots logo. Turns out it's an actual symbol, a road sign actually. And in this case, the way I hear it is the dangerous bend symbol under different circumstances might be something that would have him reconsidering how he approaches a certain situation, how he navigates a certain road. Well, when he's in this mindset, he's just flying by it, right? And that speaks to the potential recklessness that he may exhibit when he's in this mental space. But this is his way of compensating for when he feels like he's in a state of paralysis because of the fear of the unknown, or the fear of, a dangerous bend symbol, right? He's got that warning in front of him. He may not know what to do. He may not be able to move forward. This is how he pushes forward and attempts to break the cycle. So that pretty much concludes it for my thoughts on Overcompensate. Let's jump right into Next Semester. There we have it, Next Semester. And I mean, once more, this is one of the songs that I have already reacted to. So if you want my initial impression on the song and my initial interpretation of it, you could find it in the video that I've linked down below. I will say that hearing Next Semester like this right after Overcompensate, it just feels so interesting because the energy is so different, right? And I don't mean that just from the perspective of the sound of the song, because we do know that 21 Pilots will do that in their albums. But it's bigger than that. It's really just the feel of Overcompensate and like just the subject matter of that versus the subject matter of this. It just seems like by track 2, he's in a very different mental space than where he was at in track 1. And I bring that up in that fashion because I do believe that sequencing tends to be very important in 21 Pilots albums. We've seen that time and time again with their albums. It's just that introductory track is so good at laying the foundation for a lot of themes that you're going to get throughout the album. And to have Overcompensate be that track here where he is that overconfident person that we saw in Levitate, it's just so interesting to go from that right into this here in Next Semester. It's really the subject matter for me that catches me off guard, especially knowing where we're going with Backslide as well. We do kind of see the direction we're going in here, and I'll speak on that much later because we haven't actually listened to Backslide here in this reaction. But yeah, it definitely does have me really curious about what Midwest Indigo will sound like and what it'll talk about. But yeah, let's just get into Next Semester right away, into the subject matter. I mean, it's a taste test of what I hate less. Can you die of anxiousness? I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. What's about to happen? Those lines really bring me back to Jumpsuit, and it's interesting because, again, I related Overcompensate to Levitate, and this here, Next Semester, to Jumpsuit. It's like the inverse of what we had with Trench, and I do wonder if there's going to be significance to that throughout the album. And another thing that stands out to me is the chorus. I remember certain things, what I was wearing. You go back to Shy Away off of Scaled and Icy, and he talks about not circling the track, taking what you have and leaving your skin on the floor. I think the clothes and the skin can be synonymous here. And in both cases, I feel like it's the mask he put on to, you know, cover up his insecurities and portray something that he feels the world wants to see. With Shy Away, it was important for him to break free from that mask and allow himself to be himself. Here with the chorus of Next Semester, it feels like he's saying he remembers the person he was back then, and he remembers the thoughts he associates to that version of himself. And I think the last thing I'll bring up about this track right here is can't change what you've done, start fresh next semester. And that's advice that's coming down from somebody who sees him in the road and tells him to get out of the road. I feel like those lines are loaded and you could find meaning in them for, you know, different reasons. You could associate them to so many things. But I think the main important takeaway here is that in that moment, wherever he was in that past time, that version of himself wasn't in a good place. But ultimately, he survived that, and he survived it partially because somebody helped him out there, right? The person who told him to get out of the road. Can't change what you've done. We don't know exactly what he did, but it's something that he's not proud of. I could assume that just because he says start fresh next semester, why exactly would you want to start fresh? Because you don't want to be associated to whatever that thing was, that failure that you feel you had. So next semester presents him with a new opportunity, and whatever he did with that, he is where he is here today. Now let's jump into track 3, and this is the last track that I have reacted to. I technically reacted to the Craving, but Jenna's version could be different than the single version, so we'll see that in due time. Let's jump right into it. Place to place, adding weight, tendencies on repeat, benefit from a shoe with no lace, take the seat with the crease in it. I don't wanna backslide to where I've started from. I'll take anything you have if you could throw me a line. I should've loved you better. Do you think that now's the time you should let go? Problem, thanks for asking in a way, but accidentally uncovered a new one yesterday. What happened to what I brushed under the rug I used to be? A champion of a world you can't see. Now I'm drowning in logistics. I don't wanna, cause I feel the pull. Water's over my head. Strength enough for one more time. Reach my hand above the tide. I'll take anything you have if you could throw me a line. I should've loved you better. Do you think that now's the time you should let go? It's over my head. I'll take anything you have if you could throw me a line. I should've loved you better. Do you think that now's the time you should let go? All right, there we have it. Backslide. That's a song that I listen to a lot. As it stands right now, it's probably my most listened to song of 2024. There's just so much I love about that song. The delivery of so many different lines, the build up in that pre-chorus leading up to the chorus, the explosion of sound in the chorus. There's so much to that song that I absolutely adore. I think it's an all-timer. It's going to be one of my favorite 21 Pilots songs. I usually refrain from saying that before it stands the test of time, but I don't think there's any doubt when it comes to this song right here. I absolutely love this. Now, subject matter-wise, we have him starting off with talking about tendencies on repeat. So he's addressing the fact that he's stuck in a cycle really early on here. And that's kind of an important building block for the rest of the song because he's talking about backsliding. He doesn't want to go back to where he started from. He doesn't want to get further caught in this cycle. He really wants to break it. But he just seems so overwhelmed by the thought that he could have to start from the starting point once more and, go through that cycle once more. Now, in terms of sequencing, what I found really interesting about having Backslide come here right after next semester, which came right after Overcompensate, it does feel like there's truly a break between Overcompensate and where we're going at this point in the album, right? With next semester, it felt like he was looking back on a not so good time in his life. With Backslide, it's kind of like he's back in a similar place, but maybe not the exact same place, and maybe that's what he's so fearful of. He doesn't want to backslide into where he was at in next semester, or perhaps where he was at in next semester and where he's at right now in this song are very similar places, and he's sick of just finding himself back at this point in the cycle, and that's why he's pleading for a way out of it. But beyond the cycle, two other important themes I'm seeing in this song come from the chorus. He's talking about feeling submerged under the water, and he's reaching his hand, above the tide, and he's begging to be saved. I could be wrong, but I don't feel like we've seen him reach out to be saved in this way since like Heavy Dirty Soul on Blurry Face, and before that we kind of saw that more so in albums like the self-titled album and Regional at Best. It's something he seemed to move away from, at least lyrically. So it's interesting to see him bring it up like this, but also just the idea that he's saying, I don't mind if it's lonely, I don't mind if it's fair, I don't care, you control me, leading me anywhere. It's like he's conceding to whatever he's asking help from. He said, I should have loved you better. Do you think that now's the time you should let go? It's like he's questioning his worth here, and he feels guilty for not providing this thing or person or whatever it is with the attention and love that it deserved. And thus he may not be deserving of the help that he's asking for. And because of that insecurity, he's willing to overcompensate by conceding himself in this way. So once more in this track, we're being introduced to the negative consequences of some of that reckless behavior of overcompensating. He gets to a point in the cycle where he just feels like he's drowning, and he'd do anything to get his head above the water, and whatever he's doing in those circumstances can lead to further troubles down the road. So all in all, I think we're seeing a certain tendency that he tends to have at this stage in the cycle that will further perpetuate the cycle at a later time. And that just kind of speaks to the tragic aspect of this song, where he's pleading to, you know, be pulled out of that water that he's drowning in. He's hoping to not backslide. He doesn't feel like he could go through this cycle again. He feels so overwhelmed, but what he's doing in this moment is part of what leads to the cycle going on. And it's really not the asking for help. I don't think it necessarily is what he's turning to. It's more how he's turning to it. It's the fact that he's willing to give himself up like this and, follow whatever this is and allow whatever this is to control him. But yeah, let's jump straight into track 4, Midwest Indigo. This is the first track off of Clancy that I have not yet heard at this time. Let's go. Retro vibes. That was a really fun track to listen to. Josh went hard on the drums. That was epic, honestly. My goodness, that was amazing. Subject matter wise, reach out on my way home. You could be so cold. I'll try again. You make me sad and second guess myself. You could be so cold. The second guessing is definitely the first thing that stood out to me. It comes up pretty early, then it's repeated in the chorus. I don't quite know what Midwest Indigo is, and it does seem to be important to this track. It's the title of the track, but it's also what he's relating to the second guessing, right? You could be so cold, Midwest Indigo. That said, Midwest, they are from the Midwest, Columbus more specifically. And here, with the repeated pattern of the sadness and the second guessing, we turn to the verses. Running late, so I didn't have the time to scrape the frosted windshield. Like, we're barely scraping by. Concentrate on the little gap in the ice that seems to be about as wide as our chances. That's a really cool metaphor. So it does have me wondering if he's just turning the winters in the Midwest into a metaphor for the coldness that he feels. When he says running late, so I didn't have time to scrape the frosted windshield, it's like his environment caused him to be affected, and there's ways for him to overcome that, but he hasn't taken the time to address those things. So he's just stuck with the effects of his environment, and he hasn't made the situation easier for him because he doesn't feel like he has the time to do so. Instead of scraping away, he's just going to concentrate on the little area, the little gap he could see through, and tell himself that that's good enough. Verse 2, we have him saying, cloud coverage matched my outfit to a knife. I requested counsel with the counselor and he canceled twice. It's a different blue. It's deeper than it's been. I'll be pulling into the parking lot before the heat kicks in. So the things that immediately stood out to me with those lines is it's a different blue. It's deeper than it's been. We just came off of Backslide where he talked about feeling like he was drowning. The waters, we could relate it to the blue. The blue is also a metaphor in of itself, right? Feeling blue, feeling sad. But the important thing is that he reached out for help, and he feels like he was rejected twice. So that can be part of what has contributed to him sinking to these depths. He's reached out, but he hasn't got the help that he was looking for. But playing into the metaphor about, driving in that cold temperature and not scraping the ice off of the windshield, I'll be pulling into the parking lot before the heat kicks in. It's like he may be asking for help, but he's not necessarily taking the steps towards bettering his situation immediately, right? He didn't scrape off the ice. He didn't allow his car to heat up so that the temperature within the car is warm, and so that it allows the ice on the windshield to also melt away a little easier. There's these little details that he's not doing what he can on his end to make his circumstances better. There's like these answers right in front of him, but he's reaching out externally for help because he doesn't feel like he could rely on those options right now. And it's interesting because right there we get that pre-chorus where he says, "What's your ETA?" And the response is 2 minutes, chill out, man, we're right on time. As I heard that, I kind of assumed that this was the counselor he was speaking to. It almost feels like he's rushing this counselor, but the counselor is saying, don't worry about it, we're right on time, which counters what Tyler has been saying throughout the song about not having time, and that's kind of the reason why he's not scraping the ice off of his windshield. And that's why he's not warming his car up. And yeah, then we have that outro. I want love and sunny days. I'm a bit too old to run away. You make me sad and second guess myself. You can be so cold, Midwest Indigo. And the line about being too old to run away, I don't know. There's something about that line that makes me feel like it really relates to why he's trying to break the cycle with such urgency at this point. I get the sense that he feels that he should be moving on to different types of struggles or struggles with different types of things, but he feels so trapped within this cycle and this cold environment, and he's just asking for help to get out of that. He doesn't feel like he has the solution, at least at this point in time, by this song. So he's really looking for someone or something to pull him out of it. And that concludes my thoughts for Midwest Indigo. On to track 5, Routines in the Night.
Walk the layout, routines in the night. Some doors have stay out, spray painted in white. Walk the layout, routines in the night. Some doors have stay out. I walk around instead through the memories, down the halls of my head. Here comes a new night.
Love that.
I'll send it through. I'm testing the limits of what a mind can do. I'm keeping my eyelids up no matter what. So beautiful, the space between a painful reminder and a terrible dream. I'll give you the torch, show you why I all the world's asleep. I'll walk around instead through the memories, down the halls of my head.
was really solid. We have some like enchanting vocals, enchanting yet haunting at the same time. And the result is a pretty catchy song. I could see myself having this stuck in my head for quite some time. I could see myself singing it around the house. Just a really beautiful and catchy song, but especially haunting because of the things he's saying here. Walk the layout, routines in the night. Some doors have stay out spray painted in white. While all the world's asleep, I walk around instead through the memories down the halls of my head. Now, to have a song following Midwest Indigo talking about the nighttime and his struggles at that time and at that point in the cycle, it's definitely quite interesting because you could say that Midwest Indigo is talking about that struggle as well, just from a different perspective, right? We talked about the cold, the darkness. We could say that the title Midwest Indigo is referencing nighttime in the Midwest, which is his hometown. His hometown is in the dark. Just a little callback to Blurry Face. It's like he's tied painful memories to his home base because of the struggles that he experienced at that place. Now, the interesting thing about Midwest Indigo is that he was navigating outside of his actual home, right? And the home is significant in the sense that he's talked about not wanting to leave his room. This is something he's talked about in the past. It's this idea that if he isolates himself, he'll be more safe. But he comes to find that that's his fear convincing him of that. And the reason he's so scared to leave his room and his home is because of the fear and the insecurities that he feels because of them. So with a song like Midwest Indigo, where he's out of his home and he's seemingly, on his way trying to get help, it's like he's making an effort to get out of that space. We saw the different struggles he was facing in that place, right? But here with Routines in the Night, it seems like he is more isolated than he was in Midwest Indigo. There's those struggles in Midwest Indigo. Here we're getting more of that home base struggle where he's literally stuck in that room that he has to leave. And if we're talking continuity strictly within the album, I think this is the first time he mentions the nighttime since Overcompensate. So I think this is a good time to bring that up, because there the line is, don't sleep on a boy who can't fall asleep twice in the same night. If I'm someone who's listening to this album without necessarily being familiar with 21 Pilots music, or at least their whole catalog, I might not necessarily be familiar with this idea of the nighttime and what it means within their narrative. So I really like that there's this song that's going to explicitly detail the struggle of the nighttime and what it means to them. Here comes a new night, but I'll send it through. I'll probably jump on the next one. I'm testing the limits of what a mind can do. I'm keeping my eyelids up no matter what. So at the beginning of that verse where he says, here comes a new night, but I'll send it through, in my mind it's like he's looking at all of these struggles. That's kind of what the chorus was insinuating, where he's saying that he's navigating these halls and he's like reminiscing on all of these different memories. In more of the present tense, here comes a new memory that's going to be made, right? There's a new struggle with this particular nighttime, but he'll send it through. I read into that as he's going to find a way to express it. He's going to find a way to channel it. Probably jump on the next one. I'm testing the limits of what a mind can do. I think the testing the limits line is kind of him seeing how far he can go with channeling the pain into this music. I'm keeping my eyelids up no matter what. This goes back to this idea that there's like this destructive mentality around the process. There's sacrifices he's willing to make that goes against his well-being, and that's something we've already kind of alluded to with certain tracks, right? We heard it right off the bat with Overcompensate, where he's saying he'll fly by the dangerous bend symbol. Then there's also what he's willing to concede in order to be saved. It's like there's these tendencies that have these perceived benefits to him, but they also have harmful side effects. And I think we're just seeing a different angle of that here. So beautiful, the space between a painful reminder and a terrible dream. I've been here before and I've got time. I'll give you the tour. I'll show you why. So the way this resonated with me, it feels like he just woke up from a bad dream, and that bad dream is a terrible reminder of some kind of memory. And he's stuck between two things, this reminder and a terrible dream. It's like if he falls back asleep, he feels he'll be brought back to that terrible dream. But this isn't new to him. He's been stuck in this place before. he's had this struggle and he's found ways to cope with it. Giving us the tour, I think that's synonymous with, writing this song and explaining what that looks like. With verse 2, he says, reoccurring keeps coming around, REM cycle skip, night cycle trip. It's reassuring you keep coming around. It's tough to find good company, reoccurring, days blurring. I'm still learning what this is. Just keep me company. So here we have the theme of the cycle being brought up once more. REM cycle skip is a pretty cool way to say that he can't fall asleep. But the line where he says reoccurring, days blurring, I feel like there's a lot of substance there if you take into account the messages of other songs. I'm thinking like semi-automatic and truce. It's like the sun comes up and you're saved from that struggle at the nighttime. And being saved from that is an opportunity to break free from the cycle. But for him to acknowledge here that it's reoccurring and that days are blurring, it's like he's not actually appreciating the days. He's just expecting the night to come around again. He's expecting to have to go through the struggle once more. So I think we could say that that characterizes a certain depressive state in a way, but there's like a saving grace in that where he's saying it's reassuring you keep coming around. It's tough to find good company. So the way I read into that is that, whatever this struggle is, he finds ways to channel it into the music and he communicates through the music. And there's people who, connect with that. There's people who will listen and they will appreciate it. And from what he's saying here, I get the impression that he's saying that it gives this struggle meaning to him. There's a bit of a destructive nature to the routine. And if we're talking music, that's probably something we could relate back to Chlorine. But it is useful to note that he's finding a redeeming quality in it. And that pretty much summarizes my thoughts for this song here, Routines in the Night. We're on to track 6, and that is Vignette. What a solo. Alright, so we have more of a rap song here. The first thing that stood out to me was the repetition of "It's not me, it's for a friend," Denial. And I guess the two main songs that come to mind for me when he says that, Denial, it's Polarize and Ode to Sleep. And both of those songs he explicitly used that word, right? Deny or denial. And in both cases with those songs, if I recall correctly, he's seeking forgiveness. And there's like this sense of guilt around doing that. And that's something we've kind of explored already, right? The idea of turning to someone or something to be saved, but you feel like you don't necessarily deserve saving from that thing or person. Here I'm kind of getting the sense that we're exploring that same theme. It's not me, it's for a friend. It's like I'm not asking for help for myself, it's for someone else. So I wouldn't necessarily be worthy of that help, but this person definitely is. And I think it's through that I really made sense of the song as I was listening to it. Because you go back to verse 1, not sure where it started, peeling off of his bones, placed it back together all alone, hope it held together long enough, flesh covered in bites, testing what is real, what is good, man, it's been a long night. We have reference to the nighttime again, therefore we're kind of gonna connect that to the struggles. What is the result of the struggles? Well, we've seen that it's resulted in insecurities because in dealing with these fears, he kind of eventually gets convinced that he's not good enough. And when he believes that, he morphs himself. He puts on a disguise to portray something different, something that he believes to be good, something that he believes the world wants to see, something that he believes that if he was judged upon, he would get a positive judgment. Then we go to this chorus where he says, clinging to promises, fighting off the vignette, tunnels cave, visions fade, swallowed by the vignette. Now, I feel like the definition of a vignette applies here in the sense that if you were to capture a segment of his life, it would be easy to capture the mask or the disguise he puts on and what he's portrayed. And if you do so, then you're capturing a limited scope of his life and what he is. So he's trying to fight that off. He's trying to remove that disguise. But when he says swallowed by the vignette, he feels like he's become that disguise and he feels like he's going to be judged for that. And that's where we go into verse 2 where he says he's thinking there's no way I'm headed there. Always sure-footed, educated, and was never scared. Now he can't hold out his hand without it shaking. That really speaks to the lack of confidence he has in trying to approach this thing or person or entity. There's like a shame that surrounds that because of, maybe thoughts he's had or things he's done. He feels like the judgment would be negative. And yeah, that pretty much concludes my thoughts for Vignette. He's trying to remove himself from the idea that his identity is tied to a certain mask or a certain set of masks. He doesn't want to be tied down to characteristics and disguises that he no longer identifies with. So he's fighting off those vignettes, but he feels swallowed by them. He feels overwhelmed by them. Now we move on to a song that I've definitely been looking forward to because I would love to know how the single version differs from Jenna's version, and that is the Craving. So let's jump right into it. What? Hold on, I can't hear that at all. I gotta put the volume up. Something's being said. Very different intro. My goodness.
Seems I get in my own way. The more I think, the less I say. Say enough that I let it know if I found my body in chains.
This version is heart-wrenching.
In hope she looks for me. She just wants to catch a wave, ride it out to the end of the days. I hope that I can satiate the craving. Say enough that I let it know if I found.
Oh my goodness. This is a little tough to listen to.
In hope she looks for me.
Is that Jenna? I can't tell.
Cause it's the fear of the unknown that cripples every step we take. And I just hate to put this on her, but I swear that I will give more than I take away. The craving. Now I see intentions don't mean much.
Goodness, that was a little tough to listen to. Tyler with the uke and him just singing, plainly with his voice cracking like that, and you have that intro. Very beautiful rendition of the song. It is gorgeous. It sounds so good. But you go back to that music video in the single version, it's already a heartbreaking music video when you really take into account what's happening there. But there's also like this air of funness to it, right? Whereas here, you know, you remove the drums, you have something way more stripped down, and you have that intro, and it really hits you right to the core. Yeah, let me just pull up these lyrics here. So we have the intro, and yeah, apparently that's Jenna in the intro, and she's saying, I don't know why I can't stop crying. Oh my goodness. I'm getting old and I don't know a lot about you still. So just to summarize that real quick, and you could go to that reaction to kind of get the more fleshed out version of this, but the way I hear this song, you kind of have Tyler talking about the things that are important to him and the things that are important to Jenna. And there's definitely overlap between their desires, but there's also things that are conflicting. And with my reaction to the single version, I kind of identified the music as the main thing that kind of makes Tyler feel like he gets in the way of Jenna's happiness. I think one of the main reasons I felt that way was because of the phone call that you have in Saturday, where you have Tyler talking to Jenna and she's like wondering what he's doing, and you know, he's making music, and she suggests that he should just continue doing that if he feels inspired or something. But he does want to spend time with her, and he makes that known. But there is like these conflicting desires. He does want to spend time with her, but he's also deep in this process. And that process is something we've explored in this album in Routines in the Night. And if we're judging this by some of the other elements that we've explored in this album, I do feel like there may be some guilt and shame associated to that routine for him. You know, there's certain parts of him that he no longer wishes to identify with. And you go back to Backslide where he says, kind of wish I never made Saturday. It sounds like he doesn't want to identify with that version of him that made that song. But I do think we could expand on that, and maybe it's not about the song itself, but because of what it reminds him of. Perhaps that segment where he's talking to Jenna over the phone, he doesn't like that it ever comes to that. He ultimately wants to satiate her craving for enjoying life, but communicating is also a craving of his. And that's something that's reflected in verse 1. So there's like these conflicting cravings. And here with Jenna's version, we could also expand on that, because what is communicating to him, right? You could say that he's using music to communicate. But Jenna here in the intro is saying, I don't know why I can't stop crying, I'm getting old, and I don't know a lot about you still. He probably feels like he should be communicating with her more, or finding different ways to communicate with her. And that probably gives another dynamic to this dilemma. And that pretty much concludes my thoughts on this song. Jenna's version does definitely give another perspective of what the song is talking about. I think with the single version, we already got a glimpse of how he feels guilty for how his lifestyle could get in the way of Jenna's happiness. Here with Jenna's version, I feel like we're getting additional perspective. And if you go to that chorus where he says, if I found my body in chains, I'd lay down and wait and hope she looks for me. It shows you how much she means to him, right? He's trusting her in that type of way where he's saying that he would be looking to be saved by her. He's locking himself up here in these chains. This is his own doing, or at least he feels that way. He trusts her to the extent that he feels like he could rely on her to find him and set him free. And we've already explored this theme of him feeling unworthy of being saved by certain things and certain people. He does feel a certain sense of shame when looking for help for different reasons. And here I feel like he's telling us the why when it comes to Jenna. I do think it's noteworthy to mention that he chooses to dedicate a song to her on this album, and he does so on every album. He finds a way to include her. And in this case, actually, it's literally in the middle of the album, right? You have 6 songs before, you have 6 songs after. This is literally the middle of the album. He's putting her in the middle of this whole story that he's trying to tell. In a way, I read into that as she's the center of his universe. And I think that's a good line to end off my interpretation of this song on. So yeah, on to the next one, and that is track 8, and it is named Lavish.
Welcome to the new way of living. It's just the beginning of Lavish.
It's got an old school hip hop vibe to it.
But try your best to look like this is not your first time. You're fighting for the front row, that's a nice try. You're looking real nice, smelling like worth, walking like you deserve it. And if your feet are hurting, then that's when you know you brought the right equipment to put on a show, and let it flow, let it show, shine. Welcome to the style. for squeak, cross linoleum, big flex, complex, Napoleon. I say whatever and whatever that I want, sip a Capri Sun like it's Dom Perignon. I'm talking tough happily with someone in front of me. Room on the table, everyone can live comfortably. I'm coming in hot,
Oh,
shot,
no.
hypocrisy. NDAs for the folks that talk to me. So tell your friends to follow bots anonymous. Keep it cool, keep the mood androgynous.
Yup, leave it up to 21 Pilots to give you that diversity of sounds. You go from Jenna's version of the Craving to this like old school hip hop type song. That's definitely something. Definitely love his flow on this. It's really a fun listen, and he's got those funny lines he put in there, like the line about sipping on a Capri Sun like it's Dom Perignon. But to speak on the subject matter, let's go straight to the verses. You try to look your best like this is not your first time. You're fighting for front row. That's a nice try. You're looking real nice, smelling like worth. Walk in like you deserve it. Yeah, when I heard those lines, I was definitely thinking about, you know, that persona that we get in Overcompensate and in Levitate. It's like he's trying to portray this person who is confident to compensate for the fact that he's insecure. And I do feel like this part of the verse is calling that out and insinuating that it is a disguise. And the walk in like you deserve it line, that really struck me as something that could relate to all these instances where he's seeking something but feels unworthy of it. So with that said, I do want to point out real quick that it feels like there's a lot of continuity within the songs here on the album thus far, and that's really a pleasant experience when you're listening to an album front to back like this. I feel like this is something I say a lot with 21 Pilots albums. They are really good at doing this, but I don't want to take that for granted. It is really impressive that they do that so consistently, so I'm going to mention it time and time again as I experience this. And then for the second half of the verse, he says, "And if your feet are hurting, then that's when you know you brought the right equipment to put on a show. And let it flow, let it show, shine." That line about the pain immediately brought me back to Choker off of Scaled and Icy. We're talking about worth here. Back then he said, it seems that all I'm worth is what I'm able to withstand. And I've already referred to the idea that he utilizes pain to guide his pen. He infuses pain into the music, and he feels like that makes the music good. And I feel like these lines here are evidence of that. If your feet are hurting, that's when you know you've brought the right equipment. It's like you need to feel pain in order to put on a show. That's seemingly the way he perceives it. And with verse 2, we get additional insight into the idea that he's putting on a disguise in this instance. Got that penny loafer squeak, big flex, complex, Napoleon. So right off the bat, Napoleon complex, he's trying to appear bigger than he feels. I say whatever and whatever that I want. I sip Capri Sun like it's Dom Perignon. I'm talking tough happily with someone in front of me. Room on the payroll. Everyone can live comfortably. So with those lines, I feel like we're getting insight into the incentive, like the why he's willing to do this, why he's doing it at all. He's talking tough with someone in front of him. He doesn't really feel like he's that person, but being that person allows him to help other people. Room on the payroll. Everyone can live comfortably. The more that this band is successful, the more they're able to employ people and the more they're able to help other people. So it's another perspective into why this struggle has meaning and why he feels there's a purpose to this. And those are my thoughts on Lavish. Now we're on to the next song. That's the 9th track off of Clancy, and it is entitled Navigating.
I'm trying to hold on to you cause everybody leaves. Pardon my delay, I'm navigating my head. Disassociate, I'm navigating my head. Pardon my delay, I'm navigating my head. Disassociate, I'm navigating my
My good. Wait, hold on. That ending, is that not the beginning of what was it, next semester? I feel like that sound, you hear it at the beginning of the music video in next semester. So I don't know, does that mean that like the music video for this song is supposed to come right before next semester? I know they released all the music videos for the album at midnight, or rather they started a live stream with all the music videos, and I guess they played them in a certain sequence, and I don't know if like there was a specific sequence to that, if they were just following the track list, or if there was a completely different sequence that the videos were meant to be watched in, and that's how it appeared in the live stream. I'd love it if some of you could kind of tell me how that all worked out. But it definitely feels like that sound is the sound you hear at the beginning of the music video in next semester. It's so distinct. I remember when I watched that music video, I was like, there's a sound here. It sounds like it belongs somewhere else. And yeah, it feels like here, that's exactly what that sound is. Just to speak on the song a little bit, my goodness, Josh goes so hard on the drums once more. Impeccable work from him here. Vocal delivery's on point, and once more you have one of those songs where, you know, Tyler is finding ways to say things in such a way that makes you want to move, but there is like sadness embedded in those lyrics. He seemingly consistently finds ways to deliver those messages, deliver those lyrics in such a way that isn't so heavy that it's difficult to listen to, right? Like he makes it a pleasant listening experience while still having those lyrics be part of the song. And yeah, just the instrumentation all around. The synths were so beautiful in here, the bass. It all came together really nicely to deliver a beautiful sound and a fantastic song. Now, to touch on the subject matter of the song, when he says something like, I'm navigating my head, I feel like you can't help but be brought back to Routines in the Night if you're listening to the album in the order of the track list. And I'll say it again, this is something they're doing so effectively here in this album. They're putting these little tidbits that could tie into other songs, and it really expands the universe of each song. Within Routines in the Night, he was referencing the cycle and feeling stuck between two places where, you know, if he were to fall asleep again, he would be brought back to a nightmare, and he was just woken up from a nightmare. And it feels to him at that point that it's a cycle where you know, he's not even appreciating the days so much. He's just fearful of what's to come. So how does that notion play into this song? Well, we have, I can't seem to turn the page. This haze around my face makes me feel all alone. I know you see me standing still, but when our fingers touch, I feel my way back home. So this is where things get a little interesting for me, because he says, I feel my way back home. We don't quite know if that's a good thing, right? I mentioned Hometown before off of Blurry Face, and I mentioned how Midwest Indigo kind of felt like a bit of a callback to that. He was talking about the coldness he feels in that environment, and he was talking about how that type of environment affects him and how he reacts to that type of environment. He's not really one to take the time to heat up the car because he doesn't feel like he has that time. And in that same vein, he also won't take the time to scrape off the ice from the windshield. Instead, he'll just make do with what he has. If there's this little gap in the windshield or little gap in the ice that he could see through, he's going to utilize that. That's good enough for him, or at least that's what he'll convince himself is good enough. And then we bring the concept into the idea of the house as a representation of the mind. And this is a house that he's navigating in, right? He's walking down the different halls. He's seeing these different doors, and those doors kind of represent different memories, some of which that he's not willing to explore, hence the white paint on the doors saying stay out. So all that to say, the house that he's depicted in Routines in the Night isn't necessarily an environment that he's happy in. It seems to represent his struggle in some way. So here, when he's saying, I feel my way back home, we don't quite know if it's a positive thing, but it feels like it is. I think the thing that's going on lyrically here that makes it feel that way is he talks about feeling alone, and there's a haze around his face, so it feels like it's clouding him. It's hindering his vision, and it's hindering other people's ability to see him as well. So he feels isolated, but somehow, despite those conditions, this thing, this person, or this entity is able to see Tyler, is able to see Clancy rather. And beyond that, it is possible for them to interact. When our fingers touch, I feel my way back home. It's suggesting that there's this ability on both ends for them to kind of find their ways to each other. So that's a way out of the loneliness. So if he's able to find his way home as a result, it must be a good thing, right? Well, then we cut into the chorus. Pardon my delay, I'm navigating my head. Disassociate, I'm navigating my head. Give me some advice, I'm wasting all this time. I don't know how long it's been, my oh my. So it definitely feels to me at this point like the home he was referring to back in Hometown, way back on Blurry Face. The hometown he's referring to in Midwest Indigo. The home he's talking about in Routines in the Night. It feels like these are all misrepresentations of what home is to him. It's what he's been convinced that home is, but there is a better place out there that is designated for him, that is intended for him, and he feels he could reach that place through positive actions. And that's where you get that difficulty of figuring out what is right and what is wrong, what is positive and what is negative, and what you can actually trust. And if we're going to stick to the idea of a house, I do think it's important to note that we should think of that in such a way where it's not about finding a different house, but rather redecorating what you have. Redecorating in that sense is finding ways to change your circumstances. And that's what we got out of the message and redecorate, right? That's kind of the purpose. You have to figure out a way to find pride in your legacy and make that matter to you. But anyways, bringing it all back into this song, I'm navigating my head. So instead of finding his way home, he's busy navigating these halls in his mind. Then we have him saying, how things change so rapidly, I find my self-esteem then turns so cold. I don't know if it's the intention here, but it does feel like the sequencing of the songs fits that really well. You had Lavish, where it felt like he found that self-confidence a little more. But he did acknowledge right off the bat that it was kind of this facade, right? He did acknowledge that it's a disguise he was putting on. He was compensating for the insecurities. So perhaps even acknowledging that put him in a position where that self-esteem could just vanish in an instant. So just as soon as it came, it left him. And I feel like the sequencing of the songs kind of reflect that here. Then we have a bridge where he says, since I responded to your question, if you really want to know what I'm thinking, kind of feels like everybody leaves, feeling the reality that everybody leaves. My dad just lost his mom. I think that everybody leaves. And now I'm trying to hold on to you because everybody leaves. So what he's done there is identify another fear and another insecurity of his. And if we're to follow the themes in this album, fears and insecurity will cause him to overcompensate in some way. So we bring that all the way back to verse 1, where he talks about the haze and feeling alone and the effect that the touch has on him. It allows him to find his way back home. I think we're bringing up a theme of dependency here, and that is something that could get in the way of a positive experience, a positive relationship with something or someone. We heard it in Backslide, where he was willing to give himself up in that way to be saved. We've also heard it in the Craving in some sense, in that, he feels like he's going to chain himself up with his thoughts, and in that type of scenario, he's going to rely on Jenna to set him free. That nuance where it becomes possible for him to turn that relationship into a dependency for him is one that can negatively affect said relationship. And it feels like what's giving way to that is just how he perceives relationships. Like, there's these people that matter so much to him, and this is something he's alluded to a lot as well. Again, back on Blurry Face with Lane Boy, he talks about what he would do for those he loves. Like he's willing to give up his morality and whatnot. He's bringing the cavalry. He holds on so tight to the ones he loves because ultimately he just feels like he has to protect them at all costs because, you know, there's a fragility there. And I think he feels like he could compensate for that fragility by just holding on as tightly as possible and being overprotective. But then when faced with the reality of, you know, things coming to an end, it's going to lead to, you know, that chorus again where he's saying, I'm navigating my head, disassociate. It's like he's faced with a reality that he just doesn't want to face. And despite all the compensation, he's still faced with that reality. Therefore, it causes him a lot of pain. And yeah, that pretty much summarizes how I hear navigating. It feels like he's trying to find a path away from some of these different fears, but ultimately it doesn't feel like there is a way around them. It doesn't feel like there's a way away from them. They're just certain obstacles that you will be faced with at certain points in your life. And it doesn't seem like he's quite come to terms with that just yet. So he's navigating in his head and he's lost on that route because he really is trying to find an answer here. All right, now we're on to track number 10, and that is Snapback.
Got a bad feeling that I'm about to break. Been a good streak, but the pressure's overweight. Got a bad feeling I'm gonna lose the lead. Running from a thing that I keep in 17. Is it even right for my head to keep track? If I'm gonna snap next, then I gotta snap back. Blacklisted from forgiveness for you once. It's been 25 times. It's a backslide. I commandeered a hard ride. Drove it till the engine died. And all of that progress lost today. Got a bad feeling I'm gonna lose the lead. Running from a thing that I keep in 17. Is it even right for my head to keep track? If I'm gonna snap next, then I gotta snap. Oh, it's you. Well, welcome back to the show. It's a new adaptation. It's a backslide. I hate the surprise. I have seemed to run out of excuses of why I was right. Got a bad feeling that I'm about to break. Been a good streak, but the pressure's overweight. Got a bad feeling I'm gonna lose the lead. Running from a thing that I kicked in 17. Is it even right for my head to keep track? If I'm gonna snap next, then I gotta snap back. I've been praying for my elasticity to return to the way that it was. If I'm gonna snap next, then I gotta snap back.
All right, that was Snapback. So yeah, there's a few things going on in this song that definitely makes it feel like it ties into other crucial songs. And I say crucial just because of their significance to the story from my perspective. You know, I've stated that Ode to Sleep to me is a very significant song to 21 Pilots catalog as a whole. It's kind of like the starting point for everything. At least that's seemingly the way they defined it, because they kind of say that Vessel's the starting point for them. That's the time that they were releasing music as a band under a label, whereas anything before that was kind of more on the independent side. So Vessel is kind of where it starts, and Ode to Sleep, like very first song, we're getting them talking about the cycle. We have them talking about the nighttime and its significance in their storytelling. There, Tyler talks about the pain and how he utilizes that to express himself. Maybe as we come to find in this album, it's just something that's kind of a positive byproduct of that experience, but the experience itself is something that is perceivably destroying him. But the main reason I'm bringing up that song here is in verse 1, we have him saying, blacklisted from forgiveness, fooled you once, it's been 25 times. I feel like if you take those lines on their own, you kind of get the impression that he feels like he's made a lot of mistakes along the way. But you go back to Ode to Sleep and he says, I'm not free. I asked for forgiveness 3 times, same amount that I denied. I 3-time MVP'd this crime. I'm afraid to tell you who I adore. Won't tell you who I'm singing towards. Metaphorically, I'm a whore, and that's denial number 4. So whatever it was that he was looking to for forgiveness at that point in time, he wasn't willing to fully commit to. And back then we got him going from 3 to 4. Here he's at number 25. So we kind of get an idea of just how big this cycle is and how far back it's gone. In the chorus he says, running from a thing I kicked in 17, as in 2017. So that kind of gives you an idea of how far back it goes. But if you're familiar with the songs and the albums they're from and when those come from, you come to find that, you know, the cycle itself goes back way before that. Vessel came out in 2013. Ode to Sleep was also on Regional at Best, which was from 2011. So it extends beyond 2017, or it goes further back than 2017. But we don't quite know what exactly it is that he's running from, that he kicked in 2017. It doesn't necessarily have to be the cycle itself. I don't think it is. I think it's just something that he discovered within the cycle. But yeah, once more, we have that theme of him feeling unworthy of forgiveness popping up. It seems to be something that's prevalent across the album. With that said, I bring up the next section. It's a backslide. I commandeered a hot ride, drove it till the engine died. All of that progress lost today. So it's an interesting visual that he's painting here. He was heading in a direction that he felt was the right direction to go in, but eventually what he was riding broke down. And I guess we could use the ride as a metaphor for the motive or the influence. What he thought would bring him to the destination he was looking to get to didn't get him there, and now he's sliding back to the starting point, and that's the backslide. And he brings up all of the progress he lost. It feels like he's distraught by that. But to have that section come right after he talks about the forgiveness thing, and to have him also bring up how he feels unworthy of forgiveness throughout various tracks here in this album, it feels like that's a big part of the backslide. It's a big part of what brings him back to the starting point. No matter what it is that he chooses to do, at some point in time, he feels like it is wrong. He feels like it is problematic. He feels like it would lead to negative judgments, and he can't find ways to evade that. And because he's able to convince himself of this fairly consistently, that what he's doing is wrong, he's just constantly feeling unworthy. And that's maybe where that line in the chorus is really important. Is it even good for my head to keep track? It's like, if he remembers all of these perceived failures, it's only adding to the pressure, right? He's saying, been a good streak, but the pressure's overweight. The more times he's come to the conclusion that what he was doing is wrong, the narrower the road becomes to finding what is right, because he has so many reasons now to think that certain things are wrong. And on top of that, now he's seeing all of these wrong things as parts of him, right? He feels like this is part of his identity at this point. And that perhaps speaks to what he was talking about in Vignette and what he was trying to escape from. He's trying to disassociate himself from as many of these identities as possible, because then he could potentially, take off some of the pressure and give the ride less weight to carry so that it could get further along the way. And to bring this notion into the outro, I've been praying for my elasticity to return to the way that it was. So he's hoping to go back to a version of himself that had a certain innocence, right? That didn't have to carry all this weight, that didn't think that all these things were wrong. He's trying to find that purity that he once had, where perhaps there wasn't so much judgment and so much of a fear of how he's perceived. As long as that insecurity exists, it's going to be very hard for him to move far along a road towards positivity. And that's where I think that line gains significance for me. If I'm going to snap next, I've got to snap back. I think he's come to realize that those disguises that he doesn't want to identify with are disguises that have been concocted around his insecurities. And if he's gonna not carry those around, he has to snap back at them. He has to address these insecurities and take the weight off of himself. And that's my take on Snap Back. Now we head into track 11, and that is Oldies Station.
Only consistency in your periphery is fear in the bridge of your nose. And as you move about, you learn to tune them out, but they say they continue to grow. Future's coming fast, you've got nothing in the tank. In a season of purging things you used to love, everything must go. Star streak, you're bound to break when darkness rolls on you. Push on through. Push on through. And then before you know, you lose some people close, forcing you to manage your pace. Found your capacity for love and tragedy, embracing now things always change. You learn what you can and can't take. Add some years, build some trust. You start to feel your eyes adjust when darkness rolls on you. Push on through. You don't quite mind how long red lights are taking. Push on through. You have it down, that old fight for survival. Push on through. You're in the crowd at her first dance recital. Push on through. Make it out and make mistakes. Start a streak, you're bound to
Alright, so that's a beautiful song with what I feel is a beautiful message, and I was kind of expecting one of these types of songs to come up soon in this set list. You have Tyler bringing up the hope here, and this is something that gets brought up in various 21 Pilots albums around this time, where he's detailed the struggles, he's detailed the different fears, the different insecurities. And then there's this song that really focuses on the hopeful undertone. I say hopeful undertone. If I'm talking about Vessel, you would think that I'm talking about Migraine. Despite that being a lyric from Migraine, I kind of feel like Guns for Hands is that song, in my opinion. In Vessel, it's the one that really brings up the idea that you have to get out of that room where, you're isolated with your insecurities. You have to get out and come into contact with people who are going through similar things and who can help you see things from a different perspective. These are ways you could gain additional perspective that can help you, get yourself out of the mindset you're in. And to me, the song in Blurry Face that has that responsibility is Not Today. In Trench, it's a little more spread, I would say, because I would say The Hype fits that bill, but I would also say Bandito fits that bill. In Scaled and Icy, it feels a little more nuanced to me because you could argue that it's Shy Away, which comes really early on in the album, which, don't get it twisted. You do have the hopeful undertone spread throughout the album in a certain sense, but it's just that there's a build-up at a certain point if you're following the track listing in the order that it appears on the CD. And despite those hopeful undertones, you kind of need one to really stick towards the end to kind of combat a lot of the fears and insecurities that he's talking about. So to me, on Scaled and Icy, that song is Bounce Man because he's talking about supporting someone no matter the circumstances. And on that album, there's a big focus on they, and there's this they versus us mentality. And there's also this emphasis on they trying to make you part of them and kind of infiltrate. So I always felt like Bounce Man kind of countered that in a really interesting way. Here with Oldies Station, it's covering a lot of territory. It feels like he's bringing up a lot of different themes that have come up in the album. Only consistency in your periphery is fear and the bridge of your nose, and as you move about, you learn to tune them out, but they say they continue to grow. So I definitely heard a callback in there to Navigating, where he was talking about how people always leave. If fear is the only thing that's following him along the road with consistency, it would suggest that people aren't consistent. But bringing fear along the road with you is something that's just going to weigh you down, and so you learn to tune it out. And that's kind of a response to snap back in my mind. Fear of the past and relative pain. This is something we could associate to next semester, and just this idea that there's these certain things that he's done in the past that he doesn't want to be characterized by. Future's coming fast, you've got nothing in the tank. I mean, Future's coming fast made me think of Overcompensate. There he said, days feel like perfect length, I don't need them any longer, but for goodness sake, do the years seem way too short for my soul? So there I actually felt like when he said days are the perfect length, it meant that he kind of grew out of that. He's not so afraid of the night anymore. The daytime is just enough time for him to actually find pleasure in it and to find what he needs to get through the night. But then if we take into account the words that were said in Routines in the Night, it seems that the reasoning behind that is because the days don't matter all that much because the nighttime is the focus. The days are just kind of a blur. But I do think that this song counters that, and I'll get to that in a moment. But what I do want to bring up here is that the years feel too short. I think that ties into the outro of Midwest Indigo, where he's saying he's too old to keep running. I think that kind of gets brought up in verse 2 when he says, then before you know, you lose some people close. That is an unfortunate part of life that, the more time passes, the more certain things get left behind. And there's probably this desire to go back in time to have more time with said thing or said person. So you could look at it from that perspective, but I also want to bring up the bridge where he says you're in the crowd at her first dance recital. I'm assuming he's talking about his daughter there. That's definitely something I've heard parents bring up, right? They feel like time is going so fast. Their kids are growing up so fast, and they kind of wish things would slow down a little bit. So that's how I see that this song ties into a key lyric in Overcompensate. But the hopeful undertone is what I'm going to bring focus on here, and it's part of the chorus, so I think it's intended to be focused on. Make an oath, then make mistakes. Start a streak you're bound to break. When darkness rolls on you, push on through. And that's the line that gets repeated. Push on through. Important thing about this chorus is it feels like he's found some sympathy for himself. Make an oath, then make mistakes. Start a streak you're bound to break. With Snapback, he was just talking about keeping track of all the streaks and all of the streaks that came to an end. And he seemed to feel some sense of guilt for that, right? He alluded that he may not be worthy of forgiveness for that reason. But here to say that it's a streak that you're bound to break, he's accepting that mistakes are part of the journey. He's also saying that if you find yourself in that place where, it all breaks down and, the streak comes to an end and you come to find that what you were doing was actually wrong and now you're back to the starting point, you've backslid, darkness is bound to roll on you and, you're gonna be lost, you're gonna feel misdirected, misguided. You won't know exactly what to do. What he suggests you have to do in that scenario is push on through. It doesn't necessarily matter what direction you're going in. You have to get out of that place. That's the priority. And once you find your way out of that place, you'll have more information and you will find different ways to adapt. And I think that's what verse 2 gives us, right? He says, then before you know, you lose some people close, forcing you to manage your pace, found your capacity for love and tragedy, embracing how things always change. He's referred to this idea that people don't stay, and he's also acknowledged that that's something that affects him negatively. Whenever he does lose something or someone, it's bound to hurt him, but he pushes on through, and now as a result, he's found a way to manage his pace. He's also found his capacity for love and tragedy. He knows what his limits are, and he's able to work within them. Then we have another section that provides us with additional information of how he's adapted to various fears and insecurity. You've had your turns with relative pain, little less concern when there's nothing in the tank. So when he does reach that point where he can't move on any further and there is a backslide going on and he has to start at the starting point once more, he's learned to be less concerned because now he knows he can get out of that dark place where you have those negative thoughts and it feels like the whole world is against you. In a season of lessons learned and giving up, you learn what you can and can't take. Once again, it feels like he's just got additional perspective on what his limitations are. And instead of feeling guilty for those limitations, he's going to accept them and learn to live with that. And then we have him saying, and add some years, build some trust. You start to feel your eyes adjust. When darkness rolls on you, push on through, push on through. Furthering this idea of adaptation, when he does find himself in that dark place where he feels misdirected and misguided, now he could kind of navigate that dark place a little better and escape it a little quicker because now he kind of knows what's brought him there and he knows what's awaiting him outside of it. And what is waiting for him in his case, he provides us with in this next section. You don't quite mind how long red lights are taking. Your favorite song was on the Oldies Station. You have it down, that old fight for survival. You're in the crowd at her first dance recital. And that's just this really beautiful moment in this song. I couldn't help but smile when he said it. It's like he's found this purpose that's just way too big for the darkness to have the type of impact on him where it doesn't allow him to keep pushing forward. We've had the importance of music outlined so much throughout the 21 Pilots discography. So I think that line about his favorite song playing on the radio station is a nice way to contextualize the importance of music in this scenario. It's kind of telling us that that's not something that was a mistake. The music is really important, and here's how. It is something that's providing him with some form of hope. You have it down, that old fight for survival. Now he feels well equipped to get out of that darkness. You're in the crowd at her first dance recital. His family, just such an important aspect of his life. These are people he would give his all for. He would, utilize every fiber of his being to provide them with everything they need to be happy. So that's his purpose, his reason for pushing on through. And it's what he's found by pushing on through in the first place. And that's my take on Oldies Station. Absolutely beautiful song. Now let's get on to the next one, At the Risk of Feeling Dumb. That's track number 12, so this is the second to last song off of Clancy. Let's get right into it.
See me at my lowest, you don't have to drop. Don't have to drop by. Nothing you can do this time. I don't want anyone to be alright. See me at my lowest, you don't have to drop. Used to be you and me, matching Kawasaki Z's, right around 270 in Kawasaki T's. Don't fight it, jets matching energy. Trap on your friend. Everyone tell me why. Even if they say I don't want anyone on the order. See me at my lowest, you don't have to drop. You never have to It's no work, no risk, no those night terrors are not something to take lightly. I know that it's a risk saying this, don't fight me. Stop the me, fight me. Stop the me, fight me. Stop the me, fight me. I don't want anyone on me or not. I hope that you never have to drive. No risk, no fear, no doubt. It's no work, no risk, no losing. Drop anything for me.
Another incredible song with a beautiful message. Kind of reminds me of Friend Please in terms of the subject matter and the message I feel like he's trying to put out there. You have this verse where he's touching on elements of relatability. He's saying, used to be you and me, matching Kawasaki Z's, ride around 270 in Kawasaki T's, two fighter jets matching energy, trying to forget that we're in ejection seats. It seems like there's this bond between these people, and trying to forget that we're in ejection seats, it kind of speaks to that reckless nature we've seen at certain points in this album, and perhaps that's something that their friendship was built upon, which kind of speaks to the title of this song given what he's attempting to do here. There's this recklessness to their approach, so when he's approaching a situation with carefulness, he might feel like he would appear dumb if it was for no use. But he's going to suggest here that there's always a use, because this matters more than anything else. So please keep in mind, check on your friends every once in a while, even if they say, and then you have that chorus rolling around. So he's basically saying what he feels his friend might say, and that is, I don't want anyone, know me or not, see me at my lowest, don't have to drop by, nothing you could do this time. And then right after the chorus, we have this additional section where he says, at the risk of feeling dumb, check in. It's not worth it to lose a friend. Even if they say just keep your plans, I hope you never have to drop. So the message here is, don't be prideful about this. Don't try and maintain a certain image. If you've established this friendship, it's because this person matters to you. And expanding on that idea of relatability, in verse 2, he's saying, if I'm being real, man, don't know how I feel, man. But you sleeping close to a weapon you conceal, those night terrors are not something to take lightly. I know it's a risk saying this, don't fight me. So in that scenario, it feels like he's calling out his friend, but there is some relatability in that he has his own struggles. So therefore, because he has the ability to identify those types of thoughts, he can't ignore it. If you can perceive it, then you could possibly help someone else get through it. And maybe they don't actually need it. Maybe everything is actually fine, but that's just something you have to risk. The reward is so much bigger than the potential loss. The potential loss here is your pride. You could look dumb, whatever. That's not a big deal. If you're saving someone, if you're making somebody happier, if you're helping somebody get through something, this is a much bigger reward. So in the track that preceded this one, we honed in on hope. We honed in on pushing through and what can come out of that. Here with At the Risk of Feeling Dumb, we're kind of getting more of an overview of the benefits that come from getting to that point. Now you have more tools to offer people support. And as a result, in this song, we are honing in on that theme, support. Let's see how this album ends. We're on to the last track of Clancy, Paladin Strait. Let's get into it.
I can't be alone. Guess I never told you so. Making my way towards you.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Tracing out a line, a route I've mapped 1,000 times. Standing on the shore, staring down a hurling storm, making its way toward me. Water ripped with rage. I would swim the Paladin Strait without any flotation, just a glimpse of visual aid of you on the other shoreline, waiting expectations that I'm gonna make it. Here's my chance, time to take it. Can't be sure that I'll make it, even though I'm past the point of no return. I'm all in, I'm surrounded.
This is so beautiful.
Where my mouth is, even though I would swim the Paladin Strait.
What's going on? Is this the end of the song or not? It's still like over a minute, almost 2 minutes to go. I mean, I'll sit here and listen to birds. I love birds. Man, I feel like I'm in a forest. And that brings me to trees. And if that's what this is incredible. If that's what this is. Just standing there cowardly. Hello. Oh! We're gonna end on a uke. Gotta do it.
On the ground are banditos, fighting while I find Nico. Even though I'm past the point of no return, climb the top of the tower, show yourself, I yell louder. Even though I'm past the point of no return.
So few, so proud, so emotional. Hello, Clancy.
What was that? Oh my goodness, what an ending. Nico showing his ugly mug and trying to be intimidating. Oh my goodness, that was a fantastic end to this album. As I was listening to this, I was thinking to myself, if this was the end to this whole trench concept, I don't know. It's so hard. It was so hard for me to pick up on what exactly is signaling the end here. To me, it seemed like if the song ended where it seemingly ended, right before that moment of, I mean, almost silence, it was more like nature noises or birds. If the song ended there, it felt like this was a fantastic conclusion to the album as a whole. I did feel like it tied in a lot of things that were going on in the album, or maybe not necessarily tied it in because I felt like Oldies Station did that. This kind of had more of a responsibility to provide a resolution to this, right? Kind of just give some finality to the album itself. And I felt like it did that with the assist of Oldies Station and Snap Back. I think those three songs really came together to provide the type of conclusion that this album needed. But given that the album is entitled Clancy, and given the intro that we had with Overcompensate with Clancy introducing himself, it did feel like we needed something from Clancy or something directed at Clancy. And that's exactly what we got with the actual ending. On the ground are banditos fighting while I find Nico. Even though I'm past the point of no return, climb the top of the tower, show yourself, I yell louder. Even though I'm past the point of no return. Actually, return gets cut off there, and that's where Nico comes in and says, so few, so proud, so emotional, hello Clancy. Side note, this must have been absolutely epic in the music video. I can't wait to see that. That line about the banditos fighting while he finds Nico, just so beautiful and poetic, because this is something that he's been preaching through the music, right? Fight, push on through, stay alive. Find your meaning, find your purpose, fight your demons. This is what they've pleaded through the music, and this is the message to the banditos, and that's what they're doing. And while they're doing this, Tyler is trying to fight his demon, Nico. But in this case, he's trying to find Nico as opposed to run from him, as opposed to staying away from him. Trench was designed so that he could situate Nico in his mind and find a way to get away and stay away and keep Nico at bay. Here, he's actually trying to find Nico and fight him. And to that, I'd like to bring up lyrics from Morph, from Trench. And that comes early on in the album where he says, what are we here for if not to run through all our tormentors? It's like that's part of the meaning of life to him. He has to find ways to overcome his demons. Yet with that being the belief, by the end of Trench, he's trying to leave the city, and it feels like he's having a difficult time doing so because he's been beaten down so much from trying to confront Nico and the bishops. But here, the difference with Clancy is it's like he's finishing in a position of power. He's not going above, under, around, or trying to find a secret door. He's trying to confront Nico head on. And if he finds meaning in that, that means that he's aligned with his meaning here by the end of Clancy. And you could argue that Nico making the appearance here at the end is somewhat of a cliffhanger because we don't quite know what's going to happen from this point. And I would say that that's a valid point, but again, I think the important thing is that Clancy is not afraid and is willing to confront Nico here. And this is the end of the album. This is kind of where it matters the most in the context of the storytelling. But with that said, I kind of jumped to the end here because it did feel like that's what made the most sense, with this being the end of Clancy and the end of the trench story or the trench concept, or presumably so. That's what's been suggested. I don't know if that's quite what's happening, but that's the impression I'm getting from this. It does feel like this is the end. You kind of get that cliffhanger, but the important thing is that he's pushing on through. And for the reasons he suggested in Oldies Station, you have to come to figure that whatever happens in that battle between him and Nico, he's going to push on through. But anyways, let's go back to the beginning of the song so that we could kind of look into how this song fits into the end of the album itself. I can't be alone, guess I never told you so, making my way towards you, tracing out a line, a route I've mapped 1,000 times, making my way towards you. Now, I think the you he's referring to here isn't singular, and it's not just one particular group neither. I think he's talking about a lot of different things here. I think the you has changed over the course of time, or at least it's referred to multiple different things and people. I think the you is his loved ones. I think the you is the banditos. I think the you is the music. I think the you is his faith.
I think the you is Nico.
I think the you is just all these things that have provided him with purpose. And as much as he's tried to filter out the bad, I think part of him is acknowledging that he can't really do that. You know, there may be certain things he can pick out, but overall, everything that's a part of him is a part of him for a reason, and he has to learn to accept it. That doesn't mean there isn't progress to be made. It just means that you can't forget your past. And also you can't distance yourself from certain things and certain people just because of insecurity. So I think the idea here is that he's embracing all the things that define him, and he's going to be accepting of that. And additionally, he's not going to allow himself to be isolated. He's going to join hands with those that are important to him and the things that are important to him. I would swim the Paladin Strait without any flotation, just a glimpse of visual aid of you on the other shoreline, waiting expectations that I'm going to make it. So again, there's this idea of insecurity, right? He's talked about drowning. He's talked about having to reach out and, you know, conceding himself to something to be saved. Here, it doesn't feel like he needs that. He's going to swim. If he does start sinking, he just has to keep his purpose in mind, and he will get himself to that shore because he knows what's waiting for him on that other end. Standing on the shore, staring down a hurtling storm, making its way towards me, water rips with rage, endless row of angry waves making its way towards me. And then we have the chorus again. So yeah, just to go back to what I was saying before, it doesn't matter what the conditions of the waters are. He's going to make his way across no matter what. He's going to push on through. And then we have basically the last section before we have that section with Nico. Here's my chance, time to take it, can't be sure that I'll make it, even though I'm past the point of no return. I'm all in, I'm surrounded, put my money where my mouth is. So this was really beautiful because it's like all of these struggles that he's outlined in this album, he's saying that he's found that window of opportunity, that glimmer of hope that's going to allow him to push on through. Again, I feel like Oldies Station kind of gave us that idea already, but here he's really hammering it home. And to do so, he's like really painting a vivid picture for us. He's saying, I'm all in. This is past the point of no return. There's nowhere left to run. There's no other option. This is the right thing, and he's convinced of that. this is the only thing because it just makes so much sense to him. These are all the things that really matter to him. He now has what he feels he needs to confront Blurryface, to confront Nico, to confront his shadow, to confront his fears and his insecurities. He has what he needs to feel that sense of purpose. And that just gives this perfect sense of finality to this whole thing. Whether we're talking the album, whether we're talking the concept of Trench and Dima, whether you're thinking of the themes that relate to struggles, or whether you're thinking of the lore, it's just encompassing so many things and is providing a sense of resolution. And I was really curious to see how they would approach this song here, because it felt like there was a lot of weight that was on it. It did feel like there was a lot of pressure to make this really hit a home run, and to me it really did. The message is beautiful, it's delivered beautifully. On top of that, the song is impeccable. That outro where Nico makes an appearance is like a post-credits scene, which is just perfect. It makes it feel like this should be a movie. And maybe the music videos give that type of impression as well. That's something I'm really interested to see. But concluding thoughts on this album, such a beautiful experience, and I really do want to put it that way. It's an experience. It's not just a listening experience. They're really taking you on a journey, and it's so vivid, the images that they're painting for you. If we're just talking listening experience, there's this fantastic variety of sounds here. This is something that they do very well. They have this certain versatility with their sound, and they just nail it time and time again. So I think they do a very good job of staying interesting in that regard. But then you get into the subject matter, and the storytelling is just incredible. That's what really takes you on this journey, and it takes you in so many places in different directions, and it brings you to this conclusion that offers you so much insight on the various themes that were explored throughout the album. Just incredible through and through from every aspect, in my opinion. I'm incredibly satisfied with this album, and I can't wait to listen to it time and time again. Yeah, that pretty much summarizes my thoughts on the album. I do love that it ends on so few, so proud, so emotional. Hello, Clancy. It's like, it feels like Nico is taunting us, because I mean, you're talking about the few, the proud, and the emotional. That's what Blurryface was saying to almost belittle the fans in Fairly Local, right? It's kind of like this insecurity in Tyler's mind that nobody will actually be able to relate to what he's saying. It just can't appeal to the masses. Well, to be where we're at here in the end, it's like, you could say that all you want, but look at all the people who have gathered around here. Look at where Clancy is at. Look at all the banditos. Look at how they're willing to confront you. What you've tried to belittle has grown in strength and is getting ready to overtake you. And yeah, that does it for this album reaction. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. It means so much to me. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you all next time. Have a great day, y'all.